She knocked at midnight, and I opened the door expecting anything except what I found, which was a 22-year-old I'd met once at a birthday party 3 years ago, holding a book I'd last seen in someone else's hands, saying, "You don't know me. My name is Iris. My sister told me to find you if she ever left him." I knew the sister. I stood in the doorway for a long time, looking at the book. Then I said, "Is she safe?" "She's safe," Iris said. "She's at my place. She left 2 days ago." I stepped back from the door. "Come in. My name is Owen Marsh. I'm 38. I teach secondary school English, the books that are supposed to mean something to people at the age when meaning is loudest and hardest to hold on to. I live alone in a terrace house that has too many books and good kitchen light and a garden I tend better than I tend most things. I am not by nature a person things happen to dramatically. I go for runs. I grade papers. I have strong opinions about which novels get taught in the wrong order. I have not, in the 4 years since Selin Yildiz moved to Edinburgh with a man named Marcus, done very much except be fine about it in the specific way that is not fine at all. Selin was 36 now. She had been 32 when I knew her, when we were whatever we were, which we had never named, because naming it would have required one of us to be brave first, and neither of us had managed it. She had dark eyes and the habit of underlining things in books, which she had not mentioned before borrowing mine. She was a landscape architect, which meant she thought about how designed spaces met the natural world, how you could shape the ground without pretending it wasn't ground. She was the most precise thinker I had known, in the specific way of someone who had learned to be precise because her feelings were large and needed structure around them. She had left with Marcus in January 4 years ago. Not dramatically, not an argument, not a confrontation, not anything I could have pointed to as a reason. He was available and certain and ready, and I had been present but not declared, which is a form of absence. And she had made the decision a person makes when they are tired of waiting for something that might not be coming. I had told myself she was right to go. I had believed it intermittently. Iris sat on my sofa and told me the rest. Marcus had been fine for 2 years and then not fine, in the way that some people are not fine, not dramatic, not cruel, just slowly, specifically wrong for her in ways that had taken time to become undeniable. She had left on a Wednesday morning. She had gone to Iris's flat in the city, which was 3 hours from Edinburgh, which was also, I was now doing the geography, 40 minutes from here. "She didn't come to you directly," Iris said. Not as an accusation, just as a fact that required acknowledgement. "No." She said she didn't know if she had the right to. Iris looked at me with a clear-eyed appraisal of a younger sibling who has been watching a situation from the sidelines for years and has opinions. She said she'd left things unfinished with you, and it wasn't fair to show up because she needed somewhere to land. "She could have shown up," I said. "I know. I told her that." Iris looked at the book in her hands. "She asked me to bring this first. She said you'd understand when you saw it." She held it out. I took it. It was a copy of Housekeeping by Marilynne Robinson. I had lent it to her in the second month of whatever we were, because she had said she wanted to understand why I taught it. And I had said you can't understand that without reading it first. And she had taken it with the seriousness she gave to everything I recommended and not given it back when she left. I had noticed. I had not said anything, which was thematically consistent. It was, I could see immediately, not the same book I had lent her. It was the same physical object, same cover, same pages, but it was dense with her now. Pencil annotations in the margins, narrow and precise. Underlines. brackets around whole passages. The kind of reading that is also a conversation, except the other person isn't there. I stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at it, and Iris did not rush me. The annotations were not all literary. That was the thing. Some of them were. She had engaged with the text the way she engaged with everything, seriously and specifically, and there were whole pages that were just her thinking about the book. But some of them were not about the book at all. They were about something else, set beside the lines that had prompted them, so that the text and her life were threaded together across 100 pages in a way that would have made no sense to anyone who didn't know what they were reading. I knew what I was reading. On page 47, beside the line about the feeling of being known, O would have understood this immediately and said so without making it a thing. Page 93, beside a passage about return. The problem with leaving somewhere that was almost home is that almost doesn't stop feeling like something. Page 141, near the end, in handwriting that was slightly different, written later, I understood, much later than the rest. If this falls apart, I'm going to Iris. I've told her Owen Marsh, Linden Road, in case I need somewhere real. I stood there for a long time. In case I need somewhere real. I was not prepared for that sentence. I had been fined for 4 years, and I was not prepared for that sentence. I closed the book. I looked at Iris, who was watching me from the sofa with the expression of a 22-year-old who has done a hard thing and is waiting to see if it was the right one. I said, "How is she?" "Tired," Iris said. "A little lost, trying not to need things." She paused. "That last one especially?" "Yes," I said. "She does that." Iris smiled once. "She said you'd know." I drove to Iris's flat the following evening, not midnight. I had considered midnight and rejected it on the grounds that showing up at midnight would have been a statement. And this did not need to be a statement. It needed to be a choice, made plainly, in daylight. Celine opened the door. She looked the way a person looks when they have been through something and are on the other side of it, but haven't yet established where they're standing. Tired in the bone-deep way. Still precise, still herself. She held the door frame with the composure of someone who had decided how she was going to manage this. But underneath the management, something uncertain. She looked at the book in my hand. I had brought it. I had not decided to bring it. I had picked it up and then not put it down. "Iris told me you'd shown up," she said carefully. "I drove 40 minutes, I said. "I'm not pretending I don't know what she gave me." She closed her eyes briefly, opened them. "I didn't think she'd give it to you straight away. I thought." She stopped. "I thought she'd tell you I was here, and you could decide whether to come, and then I'd have time to..." "To what?" "To figure out what to say." Her voice was very even. The evenness was doing considerable work. "I didn't come to you directly because I didn't want you to feel. I didn't want it to seem like I'd left one thing and come straight to you looking for a replacement. Is that what you think this is?" She looked at me. "I don't know what this is. I haven't known what this is since the first time." She released the door frame and stepped back. "Come in." Iris, to her considerable credit, had somewhere else to be. We sat in the small kitchen of the flat, with 2 cups of coffee and the book between us on the table, and did not immediately speak, because some rooms require a moment before they can hold what they need to hold. And we had both learned, between us, that rushing a room was how you got the wrong thing out of it. She spoke first. "I shouldn't have left the way I did." "You didn't do anything wrong." "I left without saying what it was." She looked at the table. "I knew what it was," I was afraid if I said it, you'd... She paused. Let me down gently, and I didn't want that. I wanted to keep what we were intact. So I left with it intact and tried to build something else on top of it, and that was... She stopped. That was not a strategy that worked. Something in my chest shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. Can I tell you something? I said. She looked up. Page 141. Her face changed. Just slightly, the composed surface moving, the way a very still body of water will surface ripple at a single point when something beneath it moves. You wrote that before things went wrong with him, I said. That annotation is older than the rest. The handwriting's different. You can tell the ink is different. The pencil pressure. You wrote that somewhere in the middle, when things were still, when you were still deciding. I looked at her. You had my address written down before you needed it. She was quiet for a long moment. Yes, she said. So it wasn't. This isn't about landing somewhere. You weren't writing that because you needed a contingency. You were writing it because it was true. She looked at the book, then at me. Her voice, when it came, was quiet enough that the rest of the flat seemed to lean in. I have been trying not to need things for a very long time. It's a habit. It keeps things intact. She pressed one hand flat on the table. I wrote your address because it was the only address that felt true, and then I closed the book and kept building something else. And I kept trying to make it work because the alternative was admitting that I had known something since before I left and done it anyway. What had you known? She looked at me for a long time. That you were the one I compared things to. That when something was good, I wanted to tell you first. That when I read a book, I thought you'd understand it. She paused. I kept finding your margins in it. Your margins. I looked at the book. She had been writing in the margins of my book. She had been writing in the margins of my book for 4 years. I had poor survival instincts. I had known this. I had not known the full extent of it until this moment. Selin. I said it quietly. I let you leave because I thought you'd made a decision, and it wasn't my place to argue with a decision you'd made. I didn't say what it was because I didn't think you'd said it, and I was not going to be the one to name something one-sided. It wasn't one-sided. I know that now. You should have known it then. Yes. I didn't look away. I should have. I'm sorry I didn't. I reached across the table, not to the book, past it, and put my hand over hers on the table. She looked at it. Her fingers didn't move for a moment. Then they turned, slowly, and held mine. I'm not a replacement, she said. I need you to know that. I need it somewhere real, and you're the reason it's real. You've been the reason since before I had words for it. I know, I said. I read the margins. She made a sound that was not quite a laugh, relief and exasperation, and something else underneath. The sound of a person who has been holding something carefully for a very long time, and has finally, carefully, put it down. Her eyes were bright. She didn't look away. I did not need to offer her an exit door. She had driven 3 hours and written his address in a book and sent her sister at midnight. She had already chosen. She had chosen a long time ago. I lifted her hand and held it properly, both of mine around hers, and she leaned forward across the small kitchen table, and I met her there. And that was the first true thing we had done in 4 years. From the hallway, audible through the closed front door, Iris knocked twice in a pattern that was unmistakably deliberate and called out, "I forgot my keys," in the specific tone of a 22-year-old who had not forgotten her keys and wanted us to know it. Selin pulled back and looked toward the door. She is such a... She drove 40 minutes worth of books across the city at midnight, I said. I'm inclined to forgive her. Don't tell her that. She'll be insufferable. She's already insufferable. I stood up and went to open the door. She's also right about everything, which is the related problem. 4 months later, the book went on my shelf. Not because she returned it. She didn't return it. And I didn't ask. Because it wasn't mine anymore in any sense that mattered. It went on the shelf because she put it there. On a Sunday afternoon while she was doing the thing she had started doing. Which was moving through my house with the quiet familiarity of someone learning which spaces were theirs. She put it between 2 others she'd been reading. And I looked at it there. And I thought about a woman who had borrowed a book years ago and spent 4 years writing her way through it in his margins, and that was the length of it, really. That was the whole story. A year after that, she brought a plant from her flat, the small one from the bedroom window, and set it on the kitchen sill where the light was good. She said the light at my place was better. I said I knew. She said she'd known for a while. I said I knew that too. When people asked how it started, and they always did, because the story was the kind that warranted asking, she said it started with the book, with the margins, with finding the right words in someone else's text and realizing they were about something outside it. I said it started with a knock at midnight and a 22-year-old standing in the dark holding something I'd thought was gone. We were both right. That was the thing about the two of us. We were usually both right about different parts of the same true thing. And we had learned, slowly and specifically, to hold both versions at once rather than argue for the one we'd arrived at first. It wasn't new, what we were. We'd been building it for years without calling it that. We just needed someone to knock. What would you have done if someone sent a message like that, not for now, but in case, and you found out years later? And have you ever left something unfinished with someone because naming it felt more dangerous than losing it? Tell me your story in the comments. If this one stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.